Selling your soul for a slice of pizza? What does that mean? Well, we'll come to that at the end of this. First, let's talk about Lent. Lent is a time when you fast, pray, and you meditate on the events that lead to Easter. You meditate on Jesus coming into Jerusalem, people laying the palms at his feet, the triumphal entry, overturning the tables, the moneylenders, the institution of the Eucharist, of course, the crucifixion, and then he raises from the dead on Easter. How cool is that? Something that I've been meditating on and thinking about during this Lent season is fasting itself. I fast off and on occasionally, and I believe God is challenging me to fast more often, to take it more seriously. And to be honest, that's something I've never taken seriously. I've done it occasionally, but not that often. So in my devotionals, one of the passages I've read is Matthew 4. In Matthew 4, we see that Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Thinking about that, and I thought to myself, it's like, man, that is really interesting. He was led by the Spirit to be tempted after fasting 40 days and 40 nights. First, it makes me think of one of the other messages I had to where God, he will allow Satan to sift us. He will allow Satan to try us. You look at the book of Job, and God said to Satan, hey, have you considered my servant Job? Satan asked permission to sift Peter. And God said, yes. Satan sifted Peter. And so we see that the Spirit of God led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted. Jesus is facing all the same trials and the same tribulation that we face. He is our leader. He is our example. But it says he was led by the Spirit. Makes me think of Romans. Romans chapter 8, verse 14, it says, for those who are led by the Spirit of God are children of God. Oh, so if the Spirit of God's leading us, we are his children. The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And oh man, I just love that, because that's something else I've been praying about. Is, it's no secret that my parents weren't the best. And through therapy, there's just this emptiness, this void inside of me. And that void is because that was supposed to be filled by my parents being loving and nurturing and soothing, and it didn't happen. So I've got this emptiness inside of me that's supposed to be filled with that love. Well, I've been praying about this verse and other verses where we're adopted into his family, and I'm like, well, Lord, I'm so thankful to be adopted into your family, and I pray that your mother and your father soothe me, nurture me, and fill that emptiness that my parents should have filled. Now, it has here that if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs to God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his joy. Well, it just got my brain going, and I'm like, wait a minute. Now, part of Jesus' sufferings was to fast for 40 days and be tempted by the devil. So fasting is a part of how we share in his sufferings. Oh, okay. Because we face trials and tribulations. Jesus said we're going to face trials and tribulations. And yes, there are going to be brothers that are martyred. There are going to be brothers that are persecuted. But what if you live in an area where that's not happening? Fasting. All right, we can share in his sufferings through fasting. Now we look again in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. So we see Jesus wants us to follow him. He fasted. He was tempted. He overcame that temptation. And what's interesting is at the end of that it says, angels were sent to minister him. We see in the Garden of Gethsemane the same thing. He's sweating, and the sweat is drops of blood coming down, and angels came and ministered to him. And then, here comes my betrayer. Now is the hour. So God will strengthen us for that hour. So when we fast, it's opening ourselves up for many things. One of them is being strengthened by angels. This also makes me think about we're in the last days. So how important is it for us to fast, pray, and meditate on Jesus, especially those events that draws him, that leads him, that the Spirit drawing him and leading him towards Jerusalem, towards Golgotha, towards the resurrection. So we fast. We pray to join him in his sufferings and on his journey to where he carries his cross. And in doing that, it prepares us. It prepares us for the race. It's a mind game to get to the end. Now, when you look at, and this is something that blew my mind when I thought about it the other day. Let's go to Matthew. I'm doing this on the fly. This one isn't planned. Okay, we got Matthew 27. Let's go to the crucifixion. They came to the place called Golgotha. Sitting down, they watched over him. Okay, the two rebels, I'm in verse 38, were crucified with him, one on the right, one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him. Okay, here we go. Verse 49. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. I don't know if I can pronounce that. Sabachthani. That's it. Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. Which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now notice what it says there. From noon until about 3 o'clock. See, it wasn't a one and done thing. It was early in the morning, like 6 a.m. He's taken down to the Sanhedrin. He's spit on. He's punched. He's mocked. His beard is plucked out. He's going through this kangaroo court, back and forth, back and forth. He is whipped and whipped and whipped and whipped till his flesh is hanging from his bones. And he's carrying this cross, and he gets crucified. And he's nailed to that cross. And it's not over. It wasn't over. He hung on that cross for about 3 hours. Now, this is the Son of God, who at any time, he could have said, okay, that's it. That's enough. But he was obedient to the Father. And he had to endure until the end, until the appropriate time, until he surrendered his spirit. But he had to sit there for 3 hours. And you know how we know he had to sit there? Because he did sit there for 3 hours. He did it perfectly. So it's not a one and done thing. We're running the race, as Paul said. It's a marathon. And we don't want to run out of steam. We don't want to get tired. And that got me thinking about, and this is just how my brain works. Sometimes I get weird. It got me thinking about, okay, I believe we're in the last days. And if I just didn't fast, then I wouldn't be prepared for something like the mark of the beast, right? I mean, it says we can't buy or sell without the mark. It's going to happen. The Antichrist is going to come to power. He's going to come into control. He's going to institute the mark. Personally, I think it's a microchip, but, I don't know. We'll find out when it happens, whatever it is. But whatever it is, when he implements it, he's like forehead, right hand, or no buying and selling. Well, people like me are going to say, no, there is no freaking way. After about 8 hours without food and your stomach starts to kind of rumble and get rumbly, and it's like, you know, starting to get kind of hungry and uncomfortable. And then the way my mind works is there's like an ice cream truck going by, but it's pizza. And it's like, hey, get the mark and you get a free slice of pizza. And your stomach starts going, and you give in. You're not ready to run the race. You're wore out from your hungry tummy, and you go get the mark for that slice of pizza. That's just the way my brain is like, could you imagine that? That it's a possibility that in these last days, people might sell their soul for a slice of pizza because they're not ready. They're not ready. They haven't been fasting and praying. They haven't been preparing. They haven't been sharing in the sufferings for the ultimate test. If these are the last days, this isn't tribulation that's coming. This is the great tribulation. This is a time of trouble that has never been on this earth. And if that's true, then that means it's going to be worse than it was for Jews in Germany during the reign of Nazism, right? This is going to be the reign of the Antichrist. And he's going to hate Jews, and he's going to hate Christians. It says in the Bible he's going to wear out the saints. And it says it's the time of Jacob's trouble. He's going after us. He's going after the Jews. And if we're not ready, and the institution of the mark happens, and you can't buy or sell, and you go a day without food, you go 2 days without food, it's the long run. This isn't the short, quick. It's going to wear us out. The only way we're going to be ready is the way God prepared Jesus, right? I mean, Jesus is God, but he obeyed the Father. He submitted himself to the Father. And in doing that, the Father sent these angels to strengthen him. And so for us to be ready, we got to have the angels sent to us to strengthen us. Well, Jesus fasted and prayed, and God the Father sent an angel to minister to him after the temptation. Jesus prayed in the garden to prepare to carry his cross, and he said, if it's possible, take this cup from me, but not my will, your will. And God once again sent an angel to strengthen him. So when it's our turn to carry our cross, to deny ourselves, we need to have been fasting and praying, like Jesus when he was led by the Spirit to be tempted. And we need to be continuing to pray and fast, like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. That way, God our Father will send angels to strengthen us. So when it comes time to pick up our cross, whatever it may be, if it's not getting the mark and slowly dying, slowly starving to death, that we can run that race to completion and not sell our soul for a slice of pizza.